Well, as you know, we've been building basses and guitars for years and years and years now, and I think it came to the point where I really needed to have my own kind of project. It was great having all the customers and all the work that we were doing, and obviously what we were doing is we were making different colour instruments all down to different people's specs or the type of neck profiles and everything else. So everything we ever built, we were constantly referring back to the customer, which is absolutely fine. I haven't got a problem with that whatsoever, but I kind of got to the point where I felt I needed to have a project that I could do that really didn't have to have anybody yay or nay in it for me. I could actually make the decisions myself. So I decided to go ahead and to put together all the little ideas that I culminated over the years, all the things that I brought together, all the things when we worked on other people's instruments that I thought, well, that's a great idea. And it works, whereas somebody else, sometimes we might have an instrument come in where you think, well, it's a great idea, but you know what, it doesn't actually pan out in real terms. It doesn't necessarily actually be as good an idea as it seems to be. So over the years, I brought together all these little bits and pieces, designs and features, which I'd kind of just put on the back burner for years and years and years and working. And the real kind of eureka moment was when I thought about the Super 8 pickup, because I remember talking to Pete Stevens a while, and one of the things he always used to say when anybody bought anything out is why? That was always the question, why? And if you can't answer that question, then why are you bringing out a new product? So with a standard bass, that question was always in the back of my head. What is it we're bringing to market here? What is it we're bringing to somebody that is totally unique and gives the very instrument the reason for its existence? And that eureka moment came with the Super 8. When I realised that we could not only split horizontally but vertically at the same time, then all of a sudden it opened up a complete whole new colour scheme or tone scheme, whatever you want to call it, with the instrument, which I thought was something that was totally unique. So it wasn't a case of us trying to reinvent the wheel with the Enfields. It was really a case of producing all those tones that we already know and love. The big feature was we can bring it all in to one instrument. So this was fantastic now. Rather than taking one or two or three instruments along, we designed the bass around a working musician, somebody who's actually earning a living out of what they were doing. So somebody might be in an orchestra pit, you get very little room. They might be in a function band when they can't take a lot of instruments along, but they have to do a lot of various different sounds. I've also, over the years, being a bass fan, I really believe that you can only get a P-bass or a split coil pickup sound from a split coil. Same as you can only get a single coil sound from a single coil, you can only get a humbucker sound from a humbucker. So whereas people try to kind of manipulate things through the tones and everything else, I've always really believed that the tone comes from the organic, natural sound of how that string is vibrating over the pickup. So the Super 8 really was the time where I thought, now I've got something, I've got a reason why to introduce the bass, something completely unique, something that offers something that's real. Then of course we had the huge problem of actually developing it, and that just took what seemed like forever to do. We had phasing issues, the switching issues were a massive problem. We went on and on and on, and every time we came up against a problem, we solved it. Then, you know what, along comes another problem. So it really did get to the point where not only was I being told, but I was starting to believe it's not going to happen. This isn't going to work, you can't do it, it's not doable. And that's when we got in contact with John East and sort of said, well, what do you think, John? And he got the concept, which was great, pretty much off the bat. We did a bit of experimenting, a few things where we solved a lot of problems again, which created a few others. But to cut a long story short, at the end of the day, John really did do it. So with his use of the switching system that he had developed for us, we also then went on and developed a preamp system that I thought would be unique. Because once again, I kind of find in the real working bass player, a lot of people tend to use, or that you've got options of having, say, the bass and the treble on an active bass that you can use, but the mid-range, which for me has always been, that's the most used part of a preamp for me, is the mid-range, especially live. You can do so much with it live, whereas when you start messing around too much with the bass, you get a lot of boom, or with the high end, you start to be in conflict with maybe the hi-hat or some of the guitar. So it was really a case of the mid-range was going to be where I wanted to work. So we had a proper sweep on the mid-range, and we could also dial in dB of that sweep. So rather than have a mid-range that has a set frequency, then you can just dial in the dB, but you have no way of altering what the frequency is. So we worked really hard with John to produce a preamp which had a mid-frequency that could then not only sweep in where it came in and went out frequency-wise, but also dial in 12 dB out or 12 dB in. And that for the Enfields is really the get out of jail free card from playing live, because you can actually use the Enfield, although in some instances there's a lot going on there, but it's a very, very simple instrument to use. The one thing as well that really helped in taking away some of the fear of all the knobs and the switches was the colour recognition. I'm a firm believer that when I used to play some sort of high-end alembics and basses like that, is you used to find that you forget whether what was down, what was the middle, and it all gets a little bit too much. But with the colour recognition, now I know that red is a split coil. So that's simple. Green is a single coil, blue is a humbucker. So now with the colours, I'm not even thinking about what position the switch is at, I just click it until I get the colour I want. And in that way, once again, that opened it up. So there was a lot going on there, but I needed to find a way that the potential customers or the clients, or really, that was me, I was the client on this project, I could find it easy to use. And I'm a complete technophobe with all this type of thing. So I thought, well, really, I want to have a volume, mid-frequency sweep and gain on the mid-frequency, and the colour recognition on the switches. Boom, that's it, I'm away. Now I can pick any tone I want, not through adjusting any tone parameters in the preamp. I'm getting the tone real time from the actual pickup, and that gives it a much more organic sound. Plus the tone you're starting from is organic and real, therefore you have to do a minimal amount of alteration with that with the preamp, which means the sound that comes out from that's a lot more open. And if you want the vintage sound, you really can get the vintage P or the jazz bass or even a Music Man straight off the bat without having to do a lot with the preamp. So with the Enfields, I'm immensely proud that the only side of things that we had from people that we had to look at was a lot of people saying, look, I absolutely love this bass, I love what it does, I love everything about it, but I cannot get on stage unless it is a traditional looking instrument. And then we were obviously, because that's what I didn't want to do, but I'd made the Canon bass, the Canon series, which was is the original of them. So what we did then is we then took traditional vintage P bass, traditional vintage jazz bass, and we used all the outside parameters, the neck profiles and all the other bits and pieces that we've got from other P basses and jazz basses that we make for people, you know, every sort of week, as it were, on different projects. But we then put the whole Enfield around it. All the Enfield goodies went into there, the pickup was there, or the bridge that we make is totally bespoke for us, the knobs are totally bespoke for us. All those aspects that are made that are really, really Enfield, we've put into the P and the J, which is called the Avenger Range. We put into the P and the J so that now people have all the goodies of the Enfield, plus they can get on stage because they're in maybe an older band, or they're in a more traditional band, or maybe they're in a band that just thinks it has to be a P or a J shape. And in that way they can get all the goodies, but they can still maintain the overall look. So from a distance, anyone that doesn't know much about basses will probably think it's a J or a P, but obviously inside it, it's far from that. But so that's the kind of like the newest sort of twist on the saga, as it were, is the Avenger Range, which we're just beginning to launch now. So it's a case of sort of look out for those, because I think that once again we'll be able to fulfil quite a significant amount of the marketplace for people that are working players but need the variation and need to be able to chop around different sounds and different tones while still maintaining a sort of traditional sort of outside shape.